Hello everyone, welcome back to this video series on SDTM programming with R Tidyverse for clinical SaaS programmers. In this series, we are taking a look at how to implement key SDTM programming concepts in using R. We will take a quick look at the SAS program for the same concept and then see in detail about the R program. Please note that the complete explanation of the SAS program for this concept is available in a separate playlist. I will leave the link for it in the description of this video. In this video, we will see how to merge a supplementary dataset to a parent domain. So we may need to do this while programming Adam datasets, or we may sometimes need to do this while we are generating listings or while working on other SDTM datasets, which take the previous SDTM datasets as input. Uh, let's see the input dataset for this. So I have my EC. Let me zoom in a little. So I have my EC dataset in which there are two records for subject 1001 with ECSEQ1 and ECSEQ2. ECSEQ1 and ECSEQ2. So let us take a look at sub EC. So here there are four records. So for subject 1001 for ECSEQ, for ID var is equal to ECSEQ and ID var val 1. So we have three records, which means these three Q names are nothing but the variables that are related to this first record. And similarly, this record, which has a seek of 2 for subject 1001, is related to the second record here. So effectively what we need to do is we need to bring these values into variables with the names of ECDOSINT, ECINTRS and ECDOSRES into the parent dataset so that we can present or reuse when generating Adams or when generating listings. So how do we do it? So let's zoom back in. So let us take a look at the SAS program first and then we'll move on to the R program. So let's open SAS program in full window. So here I'm creating a copy of the existing EC dataset and calling it as EC01. Similarly, I'm creating a copy of existing sub EC and calling it as sub EC01. And then what we are doing here is that we are filtering for the rows where ID var is equal to ECSEQ from sub EC and then converting the ID var val to ECSEQ. So we know that in supplementary datasets, the link between parent dataset and the supplementary dataset lies with the two variables. So one is ID var and the second variable is ID var val. So we'll have to use the combination of ID var and ID var val and create an appropriate variable. So for all the rows where ECSEQ is the identifier variable, ID var val contains the ECSEQ value which is present in the parent record. So we are creating ECSEQ variable using that ID var val from the rows where ID var is equal to ECSEQ. And then in the next step, so what we need is we need these uh, different Q names to come as columns. So now that we have in long format and we need those as columns, but at the same time, like we need to bring the values into the columns, but we name the values using the values present in QNAM variable. So for that, what we are doing is we are making use of transpose and we are using that sorted sub EC02 and creating a new dataset called subEC03. And we want to keep study ID, USUBJD and ECSEQ as as columns itself. So we are specifying them as by. And we want the values from QVal to be transposed. So we have specified that on var statement. And we want the names, values from the QNAM variable to appear as the names of the newly created columns. So we have specified it on the ID statement. So we want the labels for the newly created variables to come from the QLabel uh, values. So we have specified it on the ID label statement. And then what we have done is we have merged this transposed sub EC03 to the parent EC dataset based on study ID, USUBJD and ECSEQ to get the QNAMs merged back onto the parent dataset. So this is how we approach this question of merging supplementary datasets to parent datasets using SAS code. Let's see how we can replicate that using R program. So let us open the R program in full window, and here I am using source function to run another R program which has my input datasets for this uh, which has the code to create input datasets for this lesson. So this can be this is equivalent to %include statement of SAS. So what we are doing here is we are making use of sub-EC and then feeding it into pivot wider function. So this is kind of equivalent to our transpose when we want to transpose the data from long format to wide format. So in SAS we have only single procedure called proc transpose to transpose the data from long to wide or wide to long. But in our tidyverse package there are two different variants. One is pivot wider when we want to make the data longer from data wider from long format, and we have pivot longer when we want to make the data longer from wide format. So here, as we know that sub-EC has long structure, we want to make it wider. So we are making use of pivot wider function, and then we are specifying that id underscore calls is equal to u sub jd and id var val. So this id underscore calls parameter is equivalent to our by statement in proc transpose. And then we have this parameter called values from for the pivot wider function. So this is equivalent to our var statement, the variable from which we want the variable whose values we want to transpose. The name says values from. And then we have another parameter called names from. So this is equivalent to our id statement. So we are specifying that the names of the newly created columns have to come from the values present in qnam variable. And then we have an optional parameter called values fill is equal to null. So when we are creating that transpose, not all variables may be present in all by groups. So in that case, we want the values to be filled with null values. So in the next step, what we are doing here is in the by statement, we have specified id var val. So in the next step, we are converting that id var val to numeric value and assign it to the variable called ecseek in the mutate function. And then as we have already created ecseek, we no longer need the id var val. So we are dropping it using select function, but by specifying minus sign before the id var val. So we know that by using select function, we can keep or drop variables. If we specify variable without any minus sign, it is considered as keep, and if we are specifying minus sign before the name of the variable, it is considered as drop. So we are dropping the id var val variable here. And then what we are doing here is picking our EC, and to it we are left joining sub EC01, which already has our transposed values from this step based on the values present in u sub jd and ecseek. And then we are storing the EC01 into a dataset called output. So let us take a look at the intermediate datasets that were getting generated from our program. So there was only one intermediate dataset, that was sub-EC01. So the first one, the main input was sub-EC. So we took this dataset and we pivoted it wider and created sub-EC01. So we now got one record per u sub jd and per ecseek, and we'll have the variables with the values. We will have newly created variables, and the names of the variables would come from the values present in qnam variable, and in those particular variables we will have the values from qval variable on that specific qnam. Now in the next step, what we did was we just merged this dataset to our parent dataset and created the output. So we have the newly created columns EC DOS INT, EC INT RS, and EC DOS res are now added to our parent sub EC domain along with other variables. So let us try to quickly compare the output generated with SAS and also the one which is generated with R. So basically we should have those many number of rows which are present in EC. So in EC we had 2 rows, so it's the same. And we should have 3 new columns added, and those correspond to the values in QNAMs. EC DOS INT, EC INT RS, and EC DOS RS. Yes, we do have those 3 columns added here in the output. And for EC DOS INT, on first record it is supposed to be Y, and second record it is N, the same here. And for ECINTRS, on the first record it is local irritation, second record null, same here in the tidyverse output. And for DOS resumed QNAM, so it is Y and null, and it is the same here. So this is how we can make use of R-tidy was programmed to replicate the concept of merging a supplementary dataset back into its parent domain. Thank you for watching and keep learning.